The Hale estate stretched across the countryside like a fortress built from ambition. Its walls gleamed with imported marble. Its windows caught the morning sun and fractured it into prisms that scattered across manicured lawns. For outsiders, it was a palace. For those who lived and worked within its shadow, it was something else. A stage where every glance, every misstep, every word carried weight. Victor Hale stood at the tall window of his study, staring down at the geometric perfection of his gardens. Each hedge was trimmed with military precision, each flower bed an obedient splash of color arranged to please his eye. At 53, he had all the symbols of wealth a man could collect: private jets, board seats, rare wines, the kind of cars that never touched public roads. Yet his expression that morning was not one of satisfaction. It was hunger. Victor was not hungry for things. He was hungry for truth. The world, he believed, was filled with liars, people who said one thing and wanted another. Employees who praised him but secretly despised him. Friends who shook his hand while plotting against him. Women who swore affection while tallying his net worth in their heads. Money, he often said, was not power. It was a microscope. Give a person wealth, and you saw their soul magnified, exposed in all its rawness. And today, he would test that theory again. "Sir?" Jonathan, his aide, lingered in the doorway. The man's voice was steady, but Victor could sense the unspoken question. "The senior staff have assembled in the main hall." "Good." Victor straightened the lapels of his Italian suit, every stitch hand-sewn in Milan, every thread whispering of precision. "It's time!" The main hall of the estate was a cavern of marble and echoes. Chandeliers dripped with crystals that caught the morning light, scattering it across the polished floor. The senior staff, 23 in total, stood in a loose semicircle, their postures taut with unease. Gregory, the butler, was there at the front, his smile practiced and polite, a mask honed over 15 years of service. Marcus, the chef, shifted from foot to foot as though waiting for a verdict, the scent of butter and steel always clinging to him. David, the chauffeur, carried his usual aura of quiet calculation, his eyes darting, measuring the angles of advantage. Victor liked this. He liked the silence before the blade fell. "I've called you here for something different," he began, his voice rolling across the vaulted ceiling. He reached into his jacket and drew out a stack of black credit cards. Metal, not plastic. Each one gleamed like a shard of obsidian in the morning light. "These," he said, holding them aloft, "are connected to my personal account. No limits." The words dropped into the silence like stones into a still pond. A ripple moved through the group, widened eyes, quickened breaths. Gregory's smile slipped, then snapped back into place. Marcus rubbed his hands together without realizing. David's gaze flickered with something dangerous, the kind of ambition that whispered of yachts and casinos. "Buy whatever you want," Victor continued, walking slowly along the line of staff, placing a card in each hand. "Consider it a bonus, a gift, whatever story helps you sleep at night. But know this." He paused, letting the weight of silence press on them. "I'll know who you really are by the choices you make." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then came the whispers. "Is this a test?" Susan, one of the housekeepers, asked, her voice trembling. Victor's lips stretched into what might have been a smile, but looked more like a predator baring teeth. "Everything in life is a test, Susan. The only difference is that this time I'm grading on a curve." He moved down the line, pressing cards into expectant hands. Gregory accepted his with the flourish of a man who believed he deserved it. Marcus clutched his like a starving man offered bread. David accepted with a bow of the head already plotting, and then Victor reached the end of the line. Amara stood there, as she always did, quiet and unassuming. She was in her late 20s, her uniform as immaculate as the others, yet something about her presence was different. Her brown skin glowed faintly in the light from the high windows, and her eyes, warm, steady, met his only briefly before lowering again. "Take it," Victor said, extending the card. Her hands remained at her sides. "Sir, I don't think I should. I insist." His voice carried no room for negotiation. Slowly, as though reaching for fire, Amara extended her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly as they closed around the card. She held it gingerly as though it might burn her. Victor's gaze lingered on her longer than he intended. There was no greed in her hesitation, no calculation, just discomfort. It intrigued him more than any of the others' eagerness. When he turned away, his words carried through the hall. "No limits. Show me your heart." The moment Victor's footsteps faded, the whispers erupted. "This has to be a trap," Gregory muttered to Marcus, though loud enough for others to hear. "He'll fire anyone who spends too much." "Mark my words." "Or not enough," Marcus countered, his eyes already gleaming with possibility. "You know how he is with his games." "The trick," David added, lowering his voice, "is to spend just right. Not too greedy, but enough to show appreciation." Amara said nothing. The card in her pocket weighed more than steel. By evening, the results of the game had begun. Gregory strutted through the servants' quarters with a new Rolex on his wrist, making sure every flick of his hand caught the light. Marcus bragged loudly about a shipment of Japanese knives so sharp they could cut the air. David's voice carried from the phone, booking a first-class trip to Monaco. And Amara? She folded linens quietly, her silence as heavy as the card untouched in her drawer. Gregory sneered as he passed her. "She'll probably buy soap with that card. Maybe some discount cleaning supplies." The others chuckled. Amara lowered her head, letting the laughter pass over her like rain. She had long ago learned that silence was the best shield against mockery. But in the quiet of his study, Victor watched it all unfold. Every transaction appeared on his screen like a confession. The Rolex, the knives, the tickets. All predictable, all ordinary greed, except one card remained inactive. Untouched, Amara's. Victor leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Interesting," he murmured. Jonathan, standing nearby with his tablet, tilted his head. "Perhaps she's waiting for the right moment, sir. Planning something bigger." Victor shook his head slowly. "No, look at her record. 8 months here. No complaints. No requests for raise or privilege. She works, she vanishes. She's either the smartest of them all." His words trailed. "Or what, sir?" Jonathan pressed. Victor didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the empty line on the screen, the card unused. The silence speaking louder than any purchase. "She'll be the one to watch," he said at last. And for the first time in years, Victor Hale felt curiosity, not about profits, not about rivals, but about a maid who refused to spend his fortune. The black card lay on Amara's nightstand like a sleeping serpent. 3 days had passed since Victor Hale had placed it in her trembling hands, and still she hadn't touched it. By now, the other servants had transformed their fortunes in glittering bursts of consumption. Rolexes and designer handbags paraded through the servants' quarters like trophies of loyalty to greed. Laughter echoed late into the night as deliveries arrived. Boxes, stamped with luxury logos, stacked against their doors like a fortress of vanity. But Amara's room remained the same. Bare walls, a single framed photo of her mother smiling weakly from a hospital bed. A second photo of her younger brother, Jerome, standing proudly in front of his university's engineering building. Her real treasures. The card glimmered in the moonlight, daring her to pick it up, to swipe once and erase years of struggle. One swipe and the letter folded in her pocket. Final notice. Would lose its power to keep her awake at night. One swipe, and Jerome would not have to worry about deferring his final year of tuition. One swipe, and her mother's new prescription would be filled, insurance or not. But Amara could not make her hand reach for it. It wasn't hers. It was bait. At 4:30 a.m., her alarm buzzed with cruel familiarity. She silenced it quickly, not wanting to disturb the other maids in adjacent rooms. Her movements were practiced, automatic, sliding into the black dress uniform, pinning her hair into a neat bun. The day began as all others had, silent, invisible, purposeful. She polished the marble floors until they reflected the faint glow of dawn. She inspected the silver in the dining hall, searching for imperfections no guest would ever notice. She moved like a shadow through corridors designed to make her feel small. But today, her pocket carried extra weight, the letter, the card, the unspoken choice pressing against her ribs with every step. By 6 o'clock, The mansion stirred with life. Gregory, the butler, swept into the main hall like an actor taking the stage. His crisp uniform and smug expression betrayed the Rolex glinting beneath his cuff. "Still doing your job, I see," he remarked, his voice smooth as oil. Amara bowed her head. "Yes, Mr. Gregory," he smirked, stepping closer, lowering his voice until only she could hear. "We all saw how you hesitated with the card. What's wrong? Afraid to show your true colors?" Amara continued dusting the mantelpiece, her movements steady despite the cold knot tightening in her stomach. "I just need time to think about it." Gregory chuckled, the sound sharp and cruel. "Time to think, or time to plot. Maybe you believe virtue is the trick to winning the old man's favor. But let me tell you, little girl." He leaned in, his breath acrid. "In this house, those who don't play the game end up being played themselves." With that, he turned and left, the Rolex flashing like a weapon. Amara's hands shook slightly as she finished dusting. She hated how small Gregory's words could make her feel, but she would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Later, during her 20-minute lunch break in the servants' kitchen, Amara pulled out her phone and dialed her mother. The call connected on the third ring. "Amara, baby," her mother's voice croaked, thin but warm. "You don't need to call every day." "I want to, Mama. How are you feeling today?" "Oh, you know. Good days and bad days." "Today's a good one." Amara closed her eyes, hearing the lie hidden beneath the words. "Are you taking all your medications?" "When I can. That new prescription, the pharmacy says insurance won't cover it. But don't you worry. The others are working fine, fine." A word Amara had grown to despise. Fine meant suffering in silence. Fine meant pretending the world wasn't caving in. "I'll figure something out, Mama," she whispered. "I always do. You work too hard, baby. When's the last time you did something nice for yourself?" Amara smiled faintly, though her chest ached. "I'm fine. You just focus on getting better." They said goodbye, and Amara stared at the black card on the table before her. One swipe could erase that conversation. One swipe could buy hope, but her fingers refused to move. When Marcus entered the kitchen, the scent of truffles and expensive cologne followed him. A new designer watch gleamed on his wrist. "Talking to yourself?" he asked, glancing at the card in her hand. "Just thinking. About what you're going to buy." He smirked. "Something practical, I bet. Groceries? Cleaning supplies? Come on, Amara, live a little. When's the next time a billionaire is going to hand you a bottomless credit card?" He laughed at his own joke and left, his arrogance trailing behind like perfume. Amara's eyes dropped to her phone, where Jerome's last text waited. "Registration deadline is tomorrow. I can defer if you need me to." She typed quickly. "No, you focus on your studies. I'll handle it." But she didn't have it handled. Not even close. That afternoon, the household moved at its usual frenetic pace. Mrs. Wellington, the estate manager, scolded Amara for linens folded too tightly. A junior maid knocked over a vase while Amara was nearby, and somehow the blame landed on her. Amara bore it all with quiet endurance. Later, as she stepped into the servants' courtyard, a small voice piped up. "Miss Amara, can you help me with my fractions?" Lucy, the groundskeeper's 8-year-old daughter, clutched a math workbook to her chest. Amara's expression softened. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's sit here." They settled on the steps, the child's pencil scratching as Amara patiently explained common denominators. Each time Lucy's eyes lit up with understanding, Amara's smile deepened. For those small moments, the heaviness of her pocket lifted. Unseen by her, Victor Hale stood at his study window, watching. Jonathan appeared at his elbow. "Sir, the Johnson meeting has been moved to 3. Cancel it." Jonathan hesitated. "Cancel it, sir?" "I said, cancel it." The aide nodded stiffly, retreating without another word. Victor's eyes remained fixed on the scene below, on the maid who ignored luxury, who spent her break teaching a child. The maid whose card still sat untouched. He had set out to prove greed inevitable. But in Amara, he had stumbled upon a contradiction, and contradictions fascinated him. The grandfather clock in the great room struck 7, each chime echoing through the marble halls like a countdown. For Amara, it was more than the start of another day. It was the sound of time slipping away. The final notice in her pocket had grown heavier with every passing hour. Rent was due in 2 days. 2 days until her landlord changed the locks. 2 days until Jerome's tuition deadline slammed shut. The black card could solve it all. Yet still it sat unused. Amara moved through her duties like a ghost, polishing, dusting, arranging. The mansion gleamed under her hands, yet inside she felt frayed, pulled taut between desperation and principle. By mid-morning, Gregory cornered her in the pantry. "Well, well," he sneered, his Rolex catching the light as he crossed his arms. "Still not spending, are we?" "I haven't decided yet," Amara said softly, keeping her eyes on the shelves she was organizing. "Oh, I think you have." He stepped closer, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial hiss. "You think this little act of restraint makes you better than the rest of us? That he'll notice, that he'll reward you?" Amara stiffened but said nothing. Gregory's smile was razor-thin. "Let me tell you something about Mr. Hale. He doesn't reward virtue. He devours it. You'll find out soon enough." He left her there with the canned goods and the cold knot in her stomach. That evening, Amara sat at the edge of her narrow bed, the black card balanced on her palm. The silence of the servants' quarters was broken only by distant laughter, Marcus bragging about a new shipment of rare spices, David recounting plans for Monaco. Their joy was hollow to her, like music played just off-key. She thought of her mother's weakened voice on the phone, of Jerome, ready to sacrifice his education for her sake. Her chest tightened, her phone buzzed. A text from her landlord. "Full payment by Friday or you're out. No exceptions." She closed her eyes. One swipe. That was all it would take. Her thumb hovered over the edge of the card. But something inside her refused. Accepting help was one thing. Taking bait was another. And Amara had learned long ago, nothing given by the wealthy came without a price. Meanwhile, in his study, Victor Hale sat before the glow of his computer screen. Each transaction from his staff painted a portrait. Greed dressed as entitlement, desire masquerading as taste. Yet one card remained blank, silent. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Still nothing. Jonathan, as always, hovered nearby. "Perhaps she is waiting for the right opportunity, sir." Victor shook his head. "No, she's different." His gaze hardened. "The question is, what does she value more than money?" The next morning, Victor staged his own experiment. He requested Amara specifically to deliver his breakfast tray to the study, a task usually beneath her rank. She entered quietly, balancing the silver tray with steady hands. Fresh coffee, buttered toast, fruit arranged like jewels. Victor looked up from his desk. "Set it there." "Yes, sir." She placed it carefully before him, keeping her eyes lowered. "Tell me," Victor said, his voice deceptively casual. "What would you buy if you used the card?" Amara froze. Slowly she straightened, her hands clasped in front of her. "I don't know, sir." "You must have thought about it." She swallowed. "Maybe something for my family. Not for yourself?" Her gaze flickered up, then down again. "They need it more." Victor studied her as though she were a specimen under glass. "Most people, when given unlimited wealth, think first of themselves. Jewelry, cars, vacations, but not you." Amara shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, sir, it isn't my money. I don't feel right spending it." Victor's lips curved, but his eyes remained sharp. "Honesty." A rare thing in this house. The silence stretched. Amara bowed slightly. "Will that be all, sir?" He waved her away, but his gaze followed her until the door clicked shut. For the first time in years, Victor felt something unexpected stir in his chest. Not irritation, not boredom, but intrigue. That afternoon, the estate buzzed with deliveries, boxes stacked in corridors, receipts fluttering like confetti. The staff gathered in clusters, comparing their acquisitions, voices thick with envy and bravado. Amara walked past them quietly, carrying fresh linens. Their laughter dimmed as she passed, replaced by Gregory's mocking tone. "Careful with those sheets, Amara," he drawled. "Wouldn't want to wrinkle the halo you're polishing." Laughter rippled through the group. Amara lowered her gaze, her silence a shield. She had endured worse, but Victor had been watching from the shadows of the stairwell. He noted the way she bore the mockery, not with arrogance, not with bitterness, but with quiet endurance. That night, he returned to his study and stared at the screen. Still blank, he tapped the table once, decision hardening in his mind. If she won't reveal her heart with a card, he murmured. I'll have to find another way. Jonathan, entering quietly, raised a brow. Another test, sir? Victor's eyes glinted in the lamplight. Something more personal. Let's see what truly makes her break. In the servants' quarters, Amara finally allowed herself to cry, quietly, so no one would hear. She pressed her face into the pillow, the black card clutched in her hand. She thought of her mother, her brother, the landlord's ultimatum. Every instinct screamed at her to use it. But deep down, another voice whispered louder. Don't. She didn't know yet that Victor Hale had set his sights on her, that her refusal to bend had awakened something dangerous in him. For Amara, tomorrow would bring only more work, more pressure, more choices. For Victor, tomorrow would bring the thrill of a new experiment. And for both, it would be the beginning of something neither could predict. The storm rolled in overnight, a curtain of gray rain draping the estate in shadows. By morning, puddles pooled in the cobblestone drive, and the mansion's windows rattled against the wind. To Amara, it felt like the world itself was conspiring to press down on her chest. 2 days. That was all she had left. Victor Hale had requested her presence. Again. She knocked lightly on the heavy oak door of his study, the black card still tucked into her apron pocket like a brand. Enter. She stepped in, carrying a silver tray with tea and scones. He sat at his desk, the light from the tall windows cutting across his face. His eyes, cold and calculating, lifted to hers. Set it here, Amara obeyed, placing the tray carefully on the desk. But before she could retreat, Victor slid a folder across the polished wood toward her. What is this? She asked softly. Open it. Inside lay documents. Bank slips, letters, her landlord's final notice, Jerome's tuition invoice, even the hospital statement from her mother's recent treatment. Amara's blood went cold. Her eyes shot to Victor's. How did you? I make it my business to know the lives of those under my roof. His tone was matter of fact, but there was a razor beneath it. You are drowning, Amara, and still you refuse the lifeline I placed in your hand. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she held his gaze. Because it isn't a lifeline. It's a leash. Victor's lips curved, not a smile, but the shadow of one. Clever girl. He leaned back, folding his hands. But tell me, how long will your cleverness hold out? Your family suffers while you polish my silver. What kind of daughter, what kind of sister allows that? The words struck like knives. Amara's breath hitched, but she forced herself to whisper, the kind who refuses to sell her soul. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Victor chuckled, low and dangerous. Interesting answer. You may go. Amara turned, her hands trembling, and fled the room. Gregory was waiting. He had been watching the door of the study like a predator waiting for prey. When Amara emerged, pale and shaken, he pounced. Trouble in paradise? He sneered. She ignored him, but he moved to block her path. You think you're special, don't you? That your precious virtue makes you untouchable. He leaned close, his voice dripping venom. But Mr. Hale doesn't keep saints in his house. He keeps servants, and servants are replaceable. Amara's throat tightened, but she slipped past him without a word. Gregory's smirk deepened. Tick-tock, little maid. Time's almost up. That night, Amara sat on her narrow bed, staring at the black card glowing faintly in the lamplight. Her landlord's message haunted her, full payment by Friday. Jerome's tired voice replayed in her memory. I'll drop out, Amma. Don't worry about me. Her hand shook as she reached for the card. Just one purchase. Just one swipe. But her phone buzzed before she could decide. A message from an unknown number. Don't give in. Her breath caught. She stared at the words, her pulse racing. Another message followed, he's testing you. Hold fast. She scanned the hallway, the window, the corners of her room. Who had sent it? Another servant? Someone who had once been in her place? Or could it be Victor himself, toying with her in a new way? She shoved the phone aside, fear and confusion swirling. Nothing made sense anymore. The next morning brought no relief. Victor summoned the staff to the great hall. They stood in uneasy lines beneath the glittering chandelier as he entered, his presence sucking the air from the room. "I gave each of you an opportunity," he began, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "Some of you seized it. Some squandered it. And one," his gaze landed on Amara, "refused it." Whispers rippled through the staff. Amara's cheeks burned, but she kept her chin high. Victor continued. "A refusal is not a failure. It is a statement, and every statement has consequences." He turned abruptly and strode out, Jonathan trailing behind. The room buzzed with speculation, Gregory's laughter sharpest of all. "Consequences. Darling," he purred at Amara. "Can't wait to see what yours will be." Later that day, Amara found herself summoned once more, this time not to the study but to the greenhouse, a sprawling glass palace on the edge of the estate. The air inside was humid, fragrant with orchids and rare blooms. Victor stood among them, a dark figure against a sea of color. "Do you know why I brought you here?" he asked. Amara shook her head. "Because every flower in this house is purchased, cultivated, controlled. They bloom only because I allow it." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You, Amara, are the only one who has not bent. The only one who refuses to bloom under my hand. That is frustrating and fascinating," her pulse pounded. "If you want me to break, sir, you'll be disappointed." Victor studied her, eyes glittering. "We'll see." He plucked a single white orchid and pressed it into her palm. "For now, keep this, a gift freely given. No strings." But as she left the greenhouse, the flower trembling in her hand, Amara knew better. In Victor Hale's world, there were always strings. That night, as rain lashed against the windows, Amara sat awake, staring at the orchid on her nightstand. The black card lay beside it, twin symbols of temptation. One whispered of survival, the other of danger. And somewhere deep in the mansion, Victor Hale planned his next move. Because for him, this was no longer a simple test. It was a game, and Amara was the only player who mattered. The mansion was eerily still that night. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean, yet inside the halls, tension hung like smoke. Amara moved through the corridors with her cleaning pail, each creak of the floorboards echoing louder than it should. She could not shake the feeling that something was about to happen, that all the threads wound so tightly around her life were about to snap. Her deadline was tomorrow. Rent unpaid, Jerome's future uncertain, her mother's medicine nearly gone. She had reached the edge, and Victor knew it. When the summons came, it was not Jonathan's polite knock, but Gregory's mocking voice outside her door. "Mr. Hale wants to see you. Midnight. Study." Amara's stomach twisted. She followed, every step heavy with dread. Inside the study, Victor sat waiting. The fire burned low in the hearth, throwing shadows across his sharp features. Gregory lingered in the corner, smug as ever, arms folded. Victor gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Sit." Amara obeyed, folding her trembling hands in her lap. Victor's gaze pierced her. "Do you know why you're here?" Her throat was dry. "Because I refused." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Because you endured." Every servant here bent to the temptation of the card. They revealed themselves greedy, weak, indulgent. "But you," he tilted his head. "You starved in silence." Amara's heart pounded. "If this was a test, sir, then it was cruel." A flicker of amusement touched his mouth. "Life is cruel, Amara. Better to know who you are when the world pushes you to the edge." Gregory snorted. "Oh, spare her the philosophy, Victor. She's nothing special. She's just too stubborn or too stupid to take what's in front of her." Victor's eyes slid to him, cold as steel. "Careful, Gregory." But Gregory pushed on, his bitterness spilling over. "You've been watching her like she's some rare jewel." "She's not. She's a maid, and I'll prove it." Before Victor could stop him, Gregory lunged forward, snatching the black card from Amara's pocket. He slammed it onto the desk. "Here!" he barked. Use it. Pay your bills, save your family. Let's end this charade. Amara's hands shook as she stared at the card lying before her like a weapon. Her brother's face flashed in her mind. Her mother's frail hands. The landlord's threats. The weight of it crushed her chest. Victor said nothing. He only watched, eyes unreadable. Gregory sneered. Do it. Prove you're no different than the rest of us. Silence thickened. The fire popped in the hearth. Amara reached out, then stopped. Slowly, she pushed the card back across the desk. No. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. Not like this. Gregory's face twisted with fury. Idiot! He spat. Victor rose, his chair scraping softly against the floor. His presence filled the room like thunder. Enough, he said, voice low but dangerous. Gregory faltered. But get out. Gregory hesitated, then stormed toward the door, slamming it behind him. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Victor stepped closer to Amara. She could feel the heat of the fire on her back, the sharp weight of his gaze. You would rather suffer, he said softly, than accept what I give. Her voice broke. Because nothing you give is free. For the first time, Victor's expression softened. Not in mockery, but in something dangerously close to admiration. You're right, he murmured. Nothing is free, except perhaps you. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. He set it before her. Amara stared. What is this? Your rent. Your brother's tuition. Your mother's care. Paid in full. Her chest tightened. Why? Victor's eyes, usually so cold, burned with quiet intensity. Because I needed to know if there was anyone left in this world who couldn't be bought. And now I know, tears blurred her vision. You played with my life. Yes, he admitted. And you passed. The words landed heavy, a strange mixture of triumph and violation. Amara rose, clutching the envelope. If you think this makes me grateful, you're wrong. Victor's lips curved faintly. Gratitude is irrelevant. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because for once I found someone real. The firelight flickered between them, casting long shadows on the walls. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Victor turned away, his voice low. Go, before I change my mind. Amara didn't hesitate. She fled the study, the envelope clutched tight to her chest, her heart pounding with relief, anger, and something she couldn't name. In the quiet of her small room, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the orchid still resting on her nightstand. The envelope lay beside it, heavy with salvation. She had survived. But survival had cost her innocence, her trust, her peace. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was not the end, because Victor Hale had not dismissed her. He had marked her, and Amara's story inside the mansion of shadows was only just beginning.